Good evening, everybody. Every month, our numbers increase. You know, it's like when we first started, I think we had half the room, and now it's almost full, and it's only 7 o'clock. Usually it takes them until about 7:10, 7:15 till the room is full. So it could be that we're just gaining momentum, or it could be that Susan has just got, hot a ticket. So anyway, welcome to Comic Arts Workshop Meetup Group. We've been doing this, since a year and a half, 2 years?
It's been more than 2. I went to the second meeting, and that was September of 2017.
So the purpose of the group is for people to learn as much as they can about making comics or original graphic novels. It's for me to learn as much, but I figure, I will make a fun evening out of it. But before we go on with Susan, a few announcements. I'm going to try to get one more meetup before the holidays. I was talking last night to a regular cartoonist for the New Yorker. I think that'd be kind of cool. And then December is when we usually have our holiday party, and it's a potluck, right? It's a potluck.
That's what we did last year.
Last year, somebody brought a Thanos cake. It was kind of cool. Yeah, we took the head off. Anyway, and then the other thing before the holidays is some of you know I'm organizing Diversity Comic Con down the street over at FIT, Friday, October 25th. It's free to come, but you do have to download your ticket from the website, diversitycomiccon.com. And if you're free that day, I need volunteers. I have student volunteers, but I'd like some adult volunteers also, because I want to put some people in charge of things. And we have panels. We have among the panels we have the animated career superheroes. We have costume design for film and stage. We have children's and YA graphic novels and web comics. And we have Ross Chast, who's going to be our keynote speaker. So that's kind of cool. Again, that's October 25th at FIT, www.diversitycomiccon.com. So now we're all here, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Susan Graham, who is an agent, and she works with graphic novelists. And she will answer for us all those mysteries about getting an agent and what an agent does for a graphic novel person. So without further ado, please give it a nice round of applause for Susan. So first question, please tell us a little bit about your career path and how you became an agent.
So I guess my career path is very incredibly roundabout. I originally went to college to study voice, and then I had some family issues, and I dropped out of school, and I decided I didn't want to study voice because I hate performing. So sorry if I sing opera. I'm sure I seem very awkward. Sorry.
You can sing your answers.
No. So I studied English and film, and then I briefly dropped out of school, and then I moved to Austin, and I went back to study English with a film emphasis. And when I graduated, I had no idea what I was going to do with an English degree in Texas, like become a receptionist. I don't know. I didn't want to teach. And so I realized I started looking into library science programs, and I found a school called Simmons College. You could get a master's degree in children's literature. Who knew? So I decided to do that. So I moved to Boston, where I started in this children's program that was adjacent to a library program. And so a lot of the people who graduated from there sort of ended up migrating to New York and working in publishing. And I had my first internship the month I moved to Boston. I just emailed Candlewick Press and said, I have no idea what happens at publishing houses. I will take any internship. And the production department, because no one wants to everyone wants to be an editor, right? Like, so the production department immediately said, yes, we will take that person because they don't care. They're here to learn. So then I also interned at Hornbook Magazine, which is a children's lit review magazine. I interned in special sales at sorry, I just got very distracted.
Thanks a lot, David. You distracted her.
I took an internship at a small press doing special sales for children's books, and I took a history of publishing children's books class. And our instructor had worked at Houghton Mifflin and been editor-in-chief of the Hornbook, like, you know, been in the industry. She's a published author. She had been teaching at the college, and I took that class with a bunch of MFA people who were doing writing for children. And she was explaining to us how publishing worked. We had to do our own profit and loss sheets. We had to, you know, we talked about Ursula Nordstrom and how, you know, publishing evolved for children. And I stayed after class one day and asked her what an agent did, because all the MFA kids were wanting, you know, I say kids, we were in grad school, adults, were wanting to get an agent, and she had talked all about the publishing process but never once brought up what they did. And she said, you know, I've never worked at an agency before and I don't know. I could not tell you about the day-to-day of an agent or, you know, what their life is like. So I just started cold emailing people and asking for unpaid readerships while I had graduated. I graduated around then. So
What's a readership?
It's where you read manuscripts and give them editorial feedback.
Oh, okay. An unpaid one, so you were doing it for free.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should look for paid ones. It probably doesn't pay much, probably like $25 a manuscript or something like that. But at that point, I was adjuncting and I had another internship and I was doing part-time work elsewhere. I was very overworked. So that doesn't stop. And then I moved to New York for a paid internship that summer at Sheldon Fogelman Agency. He was one of the first children's lit agents to ever, and his first client was Maurice Sendak. So, you know, there are people in publishing who have been here forever. And he would call me into his office and just lecture me, like talk at me about copyright law and contracts, which was incredibly tedious, but also a huge gift. You know, I was being paid for someone to educate me at that point, which was nice. That had never happened before. And then I moved back to Boston and worked in a children's bookstore for a season while I applied to New York for more internships and jobs. I ended up moving here for an unpaid internship at an agency while I worked 30 hours a week in service industry. And I just knew I wanted to be an agent from the moment I found out what it is, because it's basically just creator advocacy. You know, when you work in a publishing house, you have to do what your bosses tell you. You have to work on stuff that your bosses tell you. And I do a little bit of that now, but it's very different. Certain imprints at publishing houses have a look, or, you know, try sending around a humorous picture book and people say, oh, our imprint is moving in a more elevated direction, or, you know, things like that. So people definitely have to convince their bosses to let them buy things a lot of the time. It's not just you getting to do what you want on the house side. Whereas I, as an agent, just get to say, I like that. I will try and sell it, which is way better. And I know that all the asks I'm asking for in a contract will benefit my creator. I don't have, you know, a big corporation behind me saying we can't change these language for X, Y, Z reasons. So I get to do contract work, which is fun for me. There's also some foreign rights, some sub-rights, translation type stuff. So my day-to-day is never the same. I'm always doing different things. So yeah, that was it. I just moved to New York and worked in jobs that didn't pay me with other jobs that did, and was very overworked and still
You
am.
are a nonprofit.
Ah. Yeah, and I, now, this is also the thing, right? Like you can get a full-time job as an agent assistant. You're going to be making between 26,000 and 35,000 a year, depending on the agency. The bigger agencies that have the money to pay you more usually pay you less because they can.
They're paying you in prestige.
Yes, they're paying you in the cool stuff that you get to do, and it is very cool, but you won't make as much. A lot of agents that I know worked part-time jobs, part-time assistants for 6 or 7 years before they really got the ball rolling. The way that agenting works, this is just financial school, I don't get paid until my clients do. So imagine that I get an advance for a book, and certain books get paid less for advances than others. So I might sell an adult book for 50,000 or 60,000, and I might sell a young adult debut book for 10,000, depending on, if I were to sell a book to a lot of houses, it might be $40K for a graphic novel, and it doesn't all pay out once. So if you get 15K on signing, imagine there's 15% deducted for you, which goes to the agency. And most agents, unless they run the agency, don't actually get all of that 15% because a lot of it is overhead. So if I'm selling a $10,000 book and I'm getting, say, even 10% of that, it's not very much. And then it has to earn out its advance before royalties come in, which I also get a percentage of. So if you don't have that, I'm assuming some of you are interested in how agencies work and maybe even have been thinking about, working at one, or I don't know where you're all coming from, but it's definitely it takes a while to get that ball rolling to be self-sufficient. So for me, for instance, I currently work 3 days a week assisting my boss at the agency, and then 2 days a week I do bookkeeping at an accounting firm, which is funny. And then in my free time, I work on client stuff, like reading manuscripts, doing editorial, stuff like that.
You have your own clients outside of the agency?
Well, no, you have your clients with the agency. If I were to have clients outside of the agency, it would be
conflict.
Yeah, it would be moving into ethics territory.
Now, it sounded like at one point you were your own agency.
Nope.
Nope. Oh, okay. So when you were telling me earlier that you went around and were looking for clients, it was for the agency guys.
Yeah, for me with the agency. So if you go to our website and you see all those book covers on our website, 2 of them are mine because none of my books are out yet. I've sold them. They're not out yet.
Does that mean you don't have a base pay with the agency?
I have my salary or my rates that I get paid to assist my boss.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and then whatever commission I get on top of that is when I sell a book.
I see. Okay.
Which and some agencies work differently too. There's what's called a draw, which is where you essentially have to earn your salary before you get commission. So if you get paid $30,000 a year, you don't really get paid till you don't really get your commission till you make $30,001, and then you would get like $1. Right. So yeah, it's a fun game where we essentially work on spec, but it's worth it, I think.
Why is it worth it?
Well, because I get to help people make cool books and I get to advocate for them. I get to.
Yeah, sure.
I don't mind.
Oh, forget. Well, I was curious about turnaround on a book. You say a lot of what you've sold hasn't come out yet. So yes, I'm curious about turnaround time, and then also when you sell a book, are you selling the concept? And then let's say the publisher that you sell to may want to tweak their manuscript before they even produce the graphic novel itself.
Okay, before you answer that, actually, a lot of what he's asking is going to be my second question. So I'm going to ask my question, and she can answer both.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, my second question, actually, you answered a lot of what you do as an agent already. So let me rephrase that. What's the step-by-step of bringing on a client to actually the book goes out? What happens in between? And you can answer his question within that context.
That just depends. That's the big answer. It depends. It depends on the type of book. You know, actually, there's a project that some of my clients did with Comixology, and issue 1 came out today. Quarter Killer. You should buy it. But you know, that was a faster process because it's still in the monthlies and in trade. So if they're dropping each issue a month at a time, they need to have them sort of in the can already. But I also, you know, you wanted to know from when I take on a client?
Yeah, like what's the process? Say you see one of these guys' portfolio and it's show you a pitch, and you think you can sell it, or I should, you know.
Sure.
So what exactly is the process?
I would work with you on your pitch if I had questions about world building or who your audience was.
Do you sign a contract with them right away?
It depends. I might see what they needed to do to edit it. Like if, you know, it's different with prose, right? Because the novel needs to already be written when you send it to the publisher. So if I get a manuscript that I think really has legs, but it's not quite there, I may say, you know, here's some things to work on. I'd love to see a revision. And if they come back to me, great. And if they don't, wasn't meant to be. But, you know, I work with people editorially after I've signed them as well, because you can't send it to a publisher if it's not the best it can be. It has to showcase what you want the book to be. You have to know who your audience is. A lot of people send me stuff and say that it's for middle grade and it's for adults. I'm like, I cannot sell this for 8 to 12-year-olds. What are you doing? So that's a different conversation, right? Like, who do you want to be selling your book to? Will I actually be helpful to you in selling those books, depending on the markets that you want to work in? Maybe you're getting paid $2,000 for your work, and they're not going to change the contract at all, and you should just keep your $2,000. It's not that much money. You should keep that for you. The other side of that is for publishers that take advantage of people, which you all know they're out there. The good thing about asking and knowing what to ask for means that even if they say we can't do this, if enough people ask for it, they may be shamed into it. They may think, oh, this is actually a thing that people realize they need, and if we never give it to them, they will take their work elsewhere. Or, you know, or they might just want to take care of people and have never had the opportunity to do it in that way before, so now they will look at their processes and see how they can make it work and be better to creators. You know, it depends.
Excuse me, you're referring to vanity publishers where you pay them and they help you publish, is that what you're referring to?
That's not what I'm referring to, actually. I'm referring to a lot of publishers within comics who are not great.
Okay.
But yes, vanity publishers are bad. You should never be paying someone to publish your book. Ever. Especially since you pay them, and then a lot of the time you have to earn back what they invested, but it's your investment. So, yeah, vanity publishers, bad. So then I workshop the pitch. We do have an agency agreement. Most agencies do. You know, pretty standard 15% domestic commission. And then working on the pitch for a graphic novel specifically, it usually needs a very detailed outline, a good synopsis, depending on where you're sending it, a couple pages of sample art, character concept art, and then maybe a chapter or two of script. A lot of these big publishers, you have to think about people trying to get things past acquisitions, and not everyone is used to working with comics. So whereas some comics publishers that do this can read a pitch and say, we love it, we want to buy it, we like this person's art, we'll do it. Whereas you kind of have to show the sales and marketing teams at a publisher what they're buying. Sort of a very literal proof of concept, how it will look on a page. And that's especially in children's, I think, because it has to be something that they think their marketing team does well for children of that age group. So then, because you can sell a graphic novel on a pitch, we would work on your pitch and send it in, and then if a publisher were to buy it, then you would write the script, thumbnails, inks, colors. And then it's usually about a 6-month lead time for marketing, 10 months if your publisher gets their way and everything goes to plan. It never goes to plan, but you know, we all know that there are delays in the creative process. And then your book comes out. And of course, while you're writing the book, at that point, I'm not your editor anymore. Your editor's your editor. Too many cooks in the kitchen. An agent is there to help you and advocate for you to your editor. Sometimes if you feel like you're going to be in a fight with your editor, your agent needs to step in and do the yelling so that you can, I've never yelled at an editor. I've watched it happen.
Question about the pitches.
Mm-hmm.
So ideally, the pitch will come from the one person who's a writer and the artist on it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it bad if a pitch is a separate writer and a separate artist? So there's no stigma against that.
No.
But obviously, it'd be better if there was an artist attached already to it, as opposed to a pitch where there was no artist attached.
Yes.
Okay.
It tends to be easier to get things past acquisitions when they can see the art and envision the art.
Okay.
So wait, do you need the whole team, like the letterer, the colorist, the artist, and the writer, or is it just the artist and the writer?
So again, it depends. If you're going to somewhere in traditional comics, if you don't have your whole team, you can send it to someone and they will work with you to find your team. I know a lot of writers who will pitch to an editor, and the editor will say, this is great, before I take it to my team, who do you have in mind for an artist? These are the people I'm thinking of for variant covers. How can we do, will the cover be different from the inside art? Who do you have in mind for lettering? On the traditional publishing side, I have editors asking things like, are you, as an artist, comfortable with lettering your own book? Do you need to hire a colorist? Do you want, and that's a negotiation because every artist works in different ways. I have a client who likes coloring, but flatting is really hard on her hands. So she always wants to hire a flatter. So then how can we negotiate with a publisher to see if the publisher can pay the flatter or if she has to pay it out of her advance, which sucks. These are the conversations that you negotiate at the time.
Question in the back over there.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say hire a flatter?
Yes.
I don't know what that is. I'm new in this field.
So when you're coloring, you have the flat colors, and then you do the details over it. So if someone can just go through and say, this shade of pink, this shade of green, or whatever, you can.
So the flatter
Fill it out from
basically
there.
fills in the colors within the lines so that the real colorist can actually do all the shading and not worry about going beyond the lines. So,
Thank you.
yes.
Sure.
Just had a question, kind of what you were talking about beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said that when you basically you pick up clients, and those clients technically belong, I guess, you're essentially, they're not yours, they're with the agency, I think
Well,
you said?
yeah, they're my clients in that my
Right.
boss does not represent them.
Right.
My boss has been great in that she said, I am happy for you to learn and go and do, but she does not read graphic novels and she does not know that much about them, and they're mine.
And my question was gonna be, right, my question was gonna be like, if you, let's say, decide to leave your agency right now and go to, let's say, a different one, are you
Mhm.
able to take those clients with you, or
Yes.
is there a standing agreement with them in general? Okay.
Yep, I would take them with me. In general, an agency doesn't keep a client because they've signed a contract with the agency, and a client can leave whenever the client wants to leave. I might not be able to take the contracts that I have done while with this agency with me. So, for instance, I would still be the agent for my client that I sold a book for where I am at Einstein Literary, but if I went somewhere else, that contract would stay with them and ELM would still get their cut of whatever we had negotiated. But now that client would be at the new agency with me.
Great. Thanks.
Yes.
Question coming from like a creator, an artist and someone who wants to potentially write. So how, maybe you can go into a little bit of how you pick your talent, what kind of portfolio you want to see from somebody. Does somebody just email you a portfolio? How does that kind of work?
So, for submissions process for our agency, I've been doing it a little haphazardly. I actually was talking earlier before we started. My first client, I went to an SVA portfolio viewing for their BFA students, and Veronica Agarwal was my first ever client.
She'll be at Diversity Comic Con.
She's wonderful. She has 2 books coming out from Random House Graphic. She has another graphic novel from Avenue A Books that came out this summer. She's great. I kind of look at portfolios online and tend to just cold email people and ask if they want agents. That's how I actually got several of my clients, and then it sort of grew from there because all of these young comics creators who were looking at things happening with their friends who needed agents and were working sort of said, Susan, please help my friend. So that's sort of how my list has grown, pretty organically from me reaching out to people and people being involved in the comics community. And I think comics is wonderful because that's how it works. Everybody kind of looks out for each other.
Did Veronica have a book she was working on when you asked her to sign on, or did you just sign her on based purely on her portfolio?
I signed her on based purely on her portfolio. I went and I took everybody's cards that I liked, and then after a month, she was the only person whose portfolio I kept revisiting. And I asked her for coffee, and I said, hey, what are your concepts for graphic novels? What do you envision for yourself in the future? What kind of books do you want to do? At the time, my focus was children's because that's just how I have come up from children's lit. And all of her ideas were golden. And she literally pitched me 10 ideas, and I loved them all. So I just thought, okay, all right, this is what we're doing.
So have 10 ideas if you ever get lucky enough that agent calls you.
Pitch one thing at a time. So most literary agencies have submission guidelines on our website, which we have, and I was very happy that I got to change the guidelines so that graphic novel people could know how to send graphic novels to me, because before they had sort of said, I can't put my graphic novel in the body of your email. Like you can with prose, which is very legitimate. So we revamped our website. So our submission guidelines are there. Depending on the agency, I know we are continuously behind in submissions. I am at least 6 months behind, always. Which is just because I work other jobs and I'm the only one in submissions. And a lot of agencies are like that. They get behind. So I do read everyone's queries. I go to the back and I work my way forward. But it takes a long time. So.
Do they ever ask you to sign an NDA or something like that, or is that not a?
Oh, I wouldn't do that.
Non-disclosure agreement, because sometimes you see a lot of times people are worried about sending or showing their ID to somebody because somebody might steal it. So they just have to take a chance on you.
Yeah, I would say if I had to sign an NDA, imagine that at any given moment there are 2,000 queries in my inbox. If I had to sign an NDA for every one of their works, and imagine, so they're sending me stuff. They're sending me the first 10 pages of their manuscript, right? And if they just sent me an email saying, please sign this NDA, and then I had to print it, and I had to sign it, or I had to do like a DocuSign, or I had to, and then I would have to chase people individually back and, no, I'm not doing that. You know, if someone steals your work, that's awful. I won't be the one to do it. And it's not practical for that to be the case.
I remember seeing it somewhere where somebody was asking, what if somebody steals my idea? And the response, it was a panel, I think, actually, and the panelist said, well, if you're worried about your one idea, then you have bigger problems.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Question for you. You said that you have a client right now who's got a book coming out on comiXology.
Mm-hmm.
So is it worth, because the impression I got was that it's good to have an agent when you're working in original graphic novels, meaning publishing like Random House and Macmillan, Harper, and for a second, is it worth it having an agent on the Marvel, DC, Valiant, Dark Horse side?
Again, it depends. You know, I think if you're just starting out and if they're gonna give you they may give you a lower paid rate because they can. There's some stuff in a contract that's their boilerplate that they're never gonna change, and you don't have the power to change it. I actually had a conversation with one of my clients recently, and they basically said, you know, if I ask for more, they'll just hire someone else, which is actually the case. You know, if they feel like they don't need you, they don't need you. So the answer is it depends. That goes back into that territory of if I can ask for things and get like one change in the boilerplate, will that affect other creators with that one change in the boilerplate? Will the publisher want to do that going forward?
Sorry.
So then you have other places where, especially since they do a lot of work for hire stuff, you'll just sign one work for hire that they will refuse to change, and any negotiation happens on the work order, which is like an amendment. So, you know, you might sign a contract with someone and work with them over the course of 10 years, and all the basic language is whatever you signed with them 10 years ago when you were a nobody, you know. So then it might be nice to have an agent come in and say, actually, this is what we need for them to keep working with you. But again, that depends. You have to have that clout. People have to want to work with you in that capacity. So it depends. It depends on who you are. It depends on what the project is. It depends on, you know, what's happening.
My third question you answered already, because the question was, at what point should a creator seek representation? And it sounds like either when they have a really great portfolio, like Veronica did, or I'm assuming if they have a pitch that they want to shop around.
Yes.
Is that an accurate way to answer that question?
Yes. So the cool thing about being an illustrator is that if your art is good, people will want to pay you to illustrate things. So you don't need an idea for that. You need to be able to do sample art. So sometimes publishers will just email me and say, hey, what's this illustrator's availability? I would love to work with them. Hey, please keep me in mind if they have an original project coming down the pipeline. I have a couple clients that editors have said they're one of my favorite illustrators. I'm waiting for a project to happen I can use them on. So that kind of work is never guaranteed, but if you have an agent and someone at Simon & Schuster says, hey, illustrate this graphic novel for me, then you can do that. I mean, you can do it if you don't have an agent too. It depends, but if you want someone to try and talk up your advance or negotiate a contract for you or handle the financials for you or do whatever comes up with that project.
Years ago, I was working at an ad agency, and the accountant left everybody's a piece of paper with everybody's salaries on the copy machine. So I took a quick look, and what I realized quickly was that everybody who got hired through a rep was getting paid more than the people who were not hired through a rep. So, food for thought right there.
I think you asked about time, and I did not answer. I skipped that one. So
well, you kind of did, because you said, like, they need the marketing 6 to 10 months.
So imagine that I sold, and by imagine, I'm telling you, it's real. I took on my first client in 2016. I sold my first book in September of 2017. It was a picture book text. It took several months to negotiate the contract because I was sort of revamping our boilerplate. And then we signed that contract in December. And then my client turned in his work. And then the illustrator had to illustrate it. And it's coming out in May of 2020.
Holy cow. That's too long.
It's very long. But you have to work with another illustrator might have another project or they've already signed up and the publisher really wants them, so they're going to wait, or they're going to stagger a release just because the illustrator or the author have another book coming out and they want 6 months between them so that the marketing doesn't interfere, because sometimes when a book comes out, when two books by the same person come out at the same time, one of them does really well and the other does not. So you want to make sure that everybody's taken care of so that the book lives its best life. Most contracts say that the publisher has to publish the book within X amount of time of the delivery and acceptance of final illustration. So if it's delivered in December 2018, then they might have 12 to 18 months to actually publish the book, depending on their schedules. And part of that also is, like, a publisher might say, we were gonna publish this at this date because that was when we acquired it. But this project from before, the creator got sick and had to take a couple months off, or the creator had to take a second job because they had to pay their rent, or there are lots of reasons to be late with a book, and the publisher might say, well, this one's ready because it was in the can 10 months early, swap. It's not just when the book is done, put it out. It's marketing lead time as well as making sure your list is balanced, making sure, so that means not too many books about skiing in one season. You can't have like 4 shark books and one, I don't know, what's a cool thing to do,
Well,
yeah.
There was a question back there. Who had a question back there?
I was wondering, you were saying you're 6 months behind on submissions, reading. So that means somebody submitted their book to you 6 months ago. You haven't even opened their email?
Yeah.
But you don't just go click, 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 and just kind of look at everything, just like first taste, see if you like it, you know what I mean?
No, because
love it, hate it, love it, delete.
Well, sometimes I do know that something is not for me immediately. For example, I don't do sexual assault narratives. I don't do cancer books. I don't do...
What's a cancer book?
Well, people write books about, like, oh, I'm in high school and I got cancer. It's like The Fault in Our Stars. I don't do that. But that's like, but it's not that anything's wrong with those books. It's just my mother had cancer growing up, and I don't like to consume media designed to manipulate me into sadness.
Do you get back to them then? Do you write let's say you open a cancer book and you go.
I always say, sorry, not for me. I
But
can't.
you
I
do
can't.
respond to them.
I specifically for the books that the no is because of a personal reason, like, hey, I can't advocate for your book because it's a sexual assault book and it's triggering for me. I will just say that to them because that's something that, people with trauma just get. They're like, cool, bye. Thanks for getting back to me.
Question over there.
Yeah.
So when you are looking at pitches or potential people to be an agent for, do you factor in their online presence or the marketability, stuff like that? So if you just aren't like online, that decreases your chances of being like picked up on.
If you're not online, it doesn't. If you are online and you're a Nazi, I don't want to work with you. Yeah.
Right,
So.
But as far as like social media likes and stuff like that.
Oh, I don't care about that.
Okay.
I think for some types of projects that's important. For instance, if you are selling a self-help book, but you have no experience and haven't been helping anybody and no one knows who you are, I just can't sell that. But if you're making a comic and no one's ever heard of you, publishers love debuts and people want the pool to be, they don't want it to be the same 5 people getting published year after year. And I don't want that. So, no, that's not a problem for me. And especially, there are a lot of people who are older, who aren't great at the internet, but are absolute poets. They're so talented. And there are people who don't have time for the internet, or I know people who work in social media marketing, and so they just spend their free time not online because, like if you're the person doing social media for Steakums, you probably
Steakums?
It's fine. But
they run the internet.
But you probably go home and you think like, I'm really tired of making silly jokes on the internet all day. I would like to play with my cat. I would like to play video games. I don't want to do that. I think it depends on what your life is. So, yeah, it's cool if you're not online. I think it's easier as an illustrator, especially, to be online because people can see your portfolio. There are people who send me works and I'm like, where's your website? You can't get hired if no one can see your work. So if you're an illustrator, at least have a portfolio. Even if you're not active on Instagram or whatever, like have something where you like once a month put a picture or something,
Instagram.
Yeah, something.
Okay, question. We're gonna have a time for everybody to ask questions. From an agent's perspective, what do you wish more creators sort of? Let's go by that one. Let's just do. If there was one thing you could change about the industry, I think that's a more juicy one. What would it be, or what are your long-term career goals? If there is there a book in you?
Okay. What I would change about the industry is that everyone would make more money. That's where I'm coming from. And specifically for artists, and specifically for comic artists, I've run into a lot. This is a thing. A lot of major publishers who have done graphic novels and been successful are expanding their graphic novel imprints, and that is great, and I am so excited about it. But sometimes there are horror stories of the editorial turnaround being very long, and then you having a month to get your book done, and then your publisher is pressuring you to work faster. Like, I would like for artists to never have to be in crunch, to never have to like draw a book for 15 hours straight for 3 months. That's not a way to live. It's not a way to be happy with your work. It's not a way to produce your best work. And while you're doing that, you can't take outside work. So, you can't pay your rent unless your advance was high enough, right? I would like to eliminate crunch and have everybody make more money, including the publishers. Why not? Sure.
Why
everybody.
don't they make more money currently in the current climate?
I think it's a lot of things. It depends on what publishing house you work for. It depends on profit margins. It depends on what the publisher thinks that they can make with this book. So if they print X amount and they produce it and the production costs are this much and the list price, the amount you buy it for is this much, and how they can sell the subrights for it. You know, they give an advance based on what is industry standard, which I'm putting in quotations here, and then they don't pay out all at once. So imagine you get a third on signing, a third on delivery and acceptance, and a third on publication. So you might, you know, if they wait 18 months, you're not getting that last 10K of your $30,000 advance until your book actually comes out. And that's not helping you do your work. That's after your work is done. So that doesn't help you pay your rent. That's not real. A lot of publishing houses now do it where you get half on signing and half on completion of the work as opposed to publication. It just depends on the house and what you can negotiate for yourself. But you know, if you get 15% goes to your agent, you're a freelance illustrator, so you're working on 1099s and you get $15,000 for your advance and 30% goes to taxes. How much money have you actually made?
Not a lot.
Yeah. And it's no good. So I would change that. No more crunch, more money. And for me, my long-term career goals are to advocate for people, which is what I'm doing now. So I'm already a winner. And I would like to be able to quit my second job because I hate bookkeeping. And I would like to be able to sustain myself just on agenting, which means some of my books need to be published and also earn out their advances. And I would like to, that's it, that's all I got. It's like
I have a question based on that though.
It's like a 5-year plan.
Why
Maybe
not-
a decade.
Why do you belong to, why not be your own agency? Oh, because you get the admin work, the assisting work.
Yes, I do
I
get
see.
subsistence work now. I also really like the agency where I am.
Okay.
But also, you don't want to go. I've sold books, and I think that I'm good at my job, but literally none of my books are out. I am not proven. And most of my books are not announced. 3 of my books are announced. Five now. So it means I've sold books, but no one can know about them because they're secret until a contract is signed or until the publisher decides to announce, because sometimes they're waiting for something. I was once told we can't announce this book until we found an illustrator for it, and it took them 6 months to find an illustrator. And then it took a long time to negotiate the contract for various reasons, and then the editor went on like a brief sabbatical. I also sold that book in 2017. It's coming out in 2021. It's gonna be beautiful, but
Oh wow, it's like wine.
it's a long time, and it's gonna be great. But you know, I would not advocate for someone to sign with me if I did not have a team behind me. You don't want to sign with someone who comes out of nowhere because you don't know what their background is. You don't want to sign with someone who doesn't have a proven track record. And if they don't have a proven track record, if they're not upfront with you about that, I tell everyone that I meet, I'm new. We will grow together. But, you know, some people might not be as upfront about that. They might say, you know, I've been interning at an agency for 3 years, unpaid, I know everything, and they may be very well connected and then just start taking on clients. And maybe that will work out, and maybe they will not have the support that they need. And it's very hard, especially, you know, I've told you, I work 2 jobs on top of my clients. If I didn't have support from my boss, I would be working 2 jobs on top of my clients because I'm not making money yet. You know, So like it's not, I would be like 40 hours a week bookkeeping, which again I hate, to have clients in my free time, you know. So that the support is a factor, and also making sure that whoever you're signing with is legitimate.
We have some questions over here on this side.
The contract that the publishers give you for your clients, are they strictly publishing contracts, or do they also cover the film rights to the story, the television rights to
We
the story?
retain those. You always want to retain those.
Yes, you do. That's
You retain those on behalf of the client, or the client retains those?
The client retains them.
Okay.
None of these rights are my rights, but we have foreign subagents, so we can try and sell your book in translation. You can potentially get more money that way because of the way sub-licenses are broken down. So say if you get 50% of an audiobook sub-license, say Simon & Schuster, for whatever reason, is doing a sub-licensing to another house. Simon & Schuster has their own audio. That wouldn't happen. But, you know, if for example, some publisher was sub-licensing a thing to Recorded Books or something, it's whatever profit they get from that, the cut might be 50% to you and 50% to the publisher. But imagine that your agent sold your audiobook rights and they take their 15% and you get 85%. So that's better for you. Sometimes publishers more and more won't let you take audio rights, and they'll bump up the advance to compensate for that. Sometimes, I mean, it really just depends. It depends.
Go ahead, question?
Let's say you're a writer and you're pitching animated show ideas to, you know, production companies or whatever. Do you think sometimes it's easier to do that, to pitch to someone like you, who's, you know, creating a book to present to people, or do you think, you know, maybe that's just too long a road?
I mean, that depends on you, right? Like, I wouldn't advise, if you really want your show to be animated, if that's what you want to do, I wouldn't advise writing a book as a route to get there. I would advise you writing a book if you want a book of your animated series.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like, because otherwise your heart's not going to be in it. And then if no one animates it, you're just going to have this book.
Yeah.
And your book might do really well, and you could get an animated series.
Right.
Or your book might not, and then you wouldn't.
Do you guys ever do storyboards for animated series, or do you just strictly do?
We're strictly books.
Gotcha.
I've been talking to some people about this lately. There are illustrators who have agents for commercial illustration, but you just kind of have to know, like, is this place's bread and butter doing storyboarding for whatever, or is it or so maybe their bread and butter is children's books, but they also have all these other
It's
contacts.
like a side thing.
Yeah. Or maybe they are a commercial lot. They started doing children's books because their clients wanted to, or because they had an animated show and decided they had a children's book in them, or whatever. Also, if you get a rep, they might take a higher percentage sometimes. I've heard of 20 or 25% instead of 15. But again, it depends on the type of work you're doing, if that's still worth it for you. You know.
On a side note, we're having an animation career panel at Diversity Comic Con, October 25th. So we have somebody from The Simpsons. So, any other questions? Go ahead.
Yes. Sorry, voice. If you're a writer, and I hear kind of conflicting reports on when to pitch. Some say like you have to have the manuscript 100% finished. Some say it's best to do it earlier before then. I'm just wondering if there's a rule of thumb of when would be the perfect time in the writing process to start pitching.
For writing a graphic novel?
Yes.
Again, you can sell those on proposal. Mm-hmm. If you weren't an illustrator and you had an idea, I would want to see a chapter or two of script, just because I would want to see, can you write a graphic novel script? If my illustrators were looking at this, would they have to do a lot of heavy lifting? because that's a big problem too, right? If someone doesn't quite know what they're doing, then they're not getting what they're asking for from an illustrator. Or an illustrator ends up having to do extra thumbs, which makes the book longer, which makes their timelines off because you jumped from one moment to the next and the scene needed more, or and also just, I know a lot of people can pitch a project, but then you know, I need to know, is this book actually something that teens would engage with? Is this something that I can envision on the page and see it selling to IDW? You know, like much in the way that a publisher needs to see what they're buying, I need to see what I would be having to sell or wanting to sell.
I'm not sure if it was Gina or Robin who said it, but the last thing an editor wants to see really is for a book come in all finished and they don't have a chance to help shape it. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
That does answer your
Yeah.
What about the other, what if an illustrator want to create something and, you know, can she just write, like draw a chapter, like a rough thumbnail to the picture, or do you still prefer to see the outline? And for, let's say, for an artist, probably writing is not the best way to express themselves.
There's no standard for comic book scripts, which I think is fascinating. All of my clients, their scripts look different. I have a client who thumbs everything and then puts it in the script and then does nicer thumbs. I have another client who does hybrid scripts where she'll write things and then draw a thumbs so that we can see the joke and then go back to scripting. I have another client who's an illustrator who panels everything very specifically. Panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4, page 2, splash, page 3, you know. So it depends on what you need as an illustrator, and it has to be, again, readable to people who don't read graphic novels to get it past acquisitions. But that would be a thing that we would work on in the pitching process, right? How can this be clean and communicate information? And, you know, it depends.
Chris?
Well, since, for example, you're attached to the publisher, so who you require artists specifically to sell to this one publisher, correct? No, sorry, the agency. No, so wait, so sorry, I was confused for a second. Right, so the agency has links to many publishers. So the artists that you acquire, that was my question, then they can work with many agents. They have no attachment to you because they got to get work constantly because they're waiting like 3-4 years for any given book to come out.
We represent them for all book works. Not every agent works the same. So if our if our clients want to take on work for hire stuff, if it's not in the book purview, they can do what they want. We do have they can't do a book with us and then do a book with another book agency. But there are some people who have an illustration rep, but that illustration rep doesn't represent them for books. They just do commercial work. There are some people who do work with... We actually have a very specific policy that we don't represent our clients for the work for hire stuff because a lot of them, they're getting paid $500 to do a commission for something, and if I'm not negotiating, if I negotiate that contract, I have to take a percentage. But if you're getting $200 for something, I don't need that 15%. You should keep your money.
$30.
We wanna make money for people, not take money from people. So we definitely. I have clients who email me things and say, hey, I know this isn't a book, so it's not in your purview, but I have questions about this contract. Can you negotiate it for me? And then I'll do that. But it's not a requirement at our agency. But other agencies do represent you for the book. So they sign a contract with you for the book that they're shopping to publishers, whereas we have a general one. We like to work with clients for the life of their careers.
So the one that you met that had 10 ideas, all the books that are being published with all the publishers are all through your agency.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, she's got my...
It's a relationship you have with the agent.
Mm-hmm.
They become your advocate, so they're there for you. So. You know,
Yeah.
that involves
But
some.
they're the ones that dump you if they can't sell your work.
Or you
That's
can.
a guarantee, because you can't dump them, right?
You can leave anytime you want.
Okay. Did you sign like with like a retainer, like a relationship with them?
Well, it outlines your relationship, but if you decide that your relationship needs to end, you just tell your agent.
And he asked if there's a retainer involved.
No.
No, maybe the wrong word.
You never pay an agent until they only get paid when you get paid. That's the rule. If someone is asking for money and they're saying they're an agent to represent them, they are not an agent. Run.
There's something else.
They're
Josh.
mean.
Go ahead.
We don't like them.
So I'm just wondering about the structure of it, because you mentioned that if you wanted to go to a different, as an agent, you wanted to go to a different agency house or a different company, you can do that and take your clients with you.
Mm-hmm.
How does the agency benefit from that? What does the agency get out of that? If I'm employing agents, I can just leave and take all the stuff that I'm assuming the agency would benefit from.
So, I mean, it's just like people leaving jobs. So you've still got your book contract, and you're still getting your money, and all the rest of it is stuff that we are dealing with on the back end in terms of jobs. It would be like nothing changes for you if your agent leaves a company, but there are lots of reasons for an agent to leave a company. Say the owner of the company is retiring and they're dissolving their agency, then you have to go somewhere else, right? But that agent will still have all of their contracts coming into the entity and still take their cut as they go into retirement. So they still get that money, I still get that money as my commission, and what's the liability that we owe to you will go to you. It's just I would be at a different agency. Or say I get a certain percentage that's split with my boss, and another agency offers me a different split that's in my favor, then I would go to them. Or if sometimes agencies will combine and become, a new entity. Sometimes if you're, it's just moving jobs, but it doesn't affect the money that you get for your book.
Okay.
Does that answer that? I'm sorry, you look confused.
Well, I guess I was just asking for more of the perspective of the agency.
Well, I think the agency basically says that's too bad. We really like you. They just have to eat it. They just have to live with it. If somebody leaves, if they didn't treat them well, then
Well, there's also. So I'm part-time. What if someone said, Susan, be my full-time assistant and come over here, you can still have all your clients, and then you can quit bookkeeping. That would be a reason to leave. I don't plan on leaving, but but that's not, it's just people moving jobs.
Okay, I'm going to ask the last question, then we're going to call it a night. And if you have no answer for this question, maybe we'll take one more. But my question is this. Is there anything that we haven't mentioned that you would like these people, that everybody here to know? Sorry, I didn't put it on the advanced question thing, so you get a chance to think about it.
I don't know.
Any kind of warning or
I feel like I've warned you about a lot tonight.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess just don't be afraid to put yourselves out there. If you have a portfolio, put it on the internet so people can know who you are to give you money. Because you need money. And I don't know.
I'm sorry. Well, anyways, everybody, please give a nice round of applause to Susan. And again, like I said, we're going to try to have one more meetup before the holidays. The Christmas party will be mid-December, probably that second week. Yeah.
And what's the website you go on for October 5th to get tickets for the...
DiversityComicCon.com, October 25th, Friday, right here at FIT. It's free to attend. You just have to download your ticket. And with that, if I could have everybody's help stacking the chairs again and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if Susan can hang out a little bit if anybody wants to talk to her.
Yeah, I can hang out.
But again, thanks everybody for coming.
Sir?
Hey.
I put these together, because I'm going to hand those out at Comic-Con, but I can get
I was going to actually put in a program book, but if you want to hand them out.
Well, not for Diversity Comic-Con. I'm reading a lot for the New York Comic-Con, and I was going to hand this to them. But I can get a stack of them